Welcome to the ADHD Family Summit. I'm your host, Lara, and I'm so happy to introduce you to Jessie, who is the CEO of Ace Cookie Tutoring. Welcome, Jessie.
Glad to be back. It's fun. We've collaborated, I don't even know how many times, and it's usually me asking you questions.
Yeah, it's always wonderful to have you in the ADHD Village. So I'm so grateful that you're here. And today we're going to be talking about study skills. And I know parents who are watching are probably thinking, "Ooh, I really want to find out about this because, studying can be very difficult for kids with ADHD because it requires a lot of executive function skills, which our kiddos need support with." Let's jump in and maybe you can share with us what is the most important study skill and why?
Yes, I love that question because I teach 12, and I can tell you, Laura, that every single one is very, very important. But yet, the first one I always teach is note taking, and that's for a very simple answer. It's literally, like you said, it's the most important study skill. And the reason for that is every other study skill depends on it. So if we don't have good notes, like you said, how are we going to study? Like, how are our teens going to do their homework? How are they going to actually study for that test? How are they actually going to learn the material? And then if we're talking like ADHD, we could talk all about time management and those struggles. That's one of the study skills I teach, but yet I don't teach it first because that writing the planner, that keeping track of assignments, those due dates, those are all technically notes. So everything goes back to note taking.
Okay, so writing in their planner, keeping track of due dates, that's part of note taking.
Exactly.
So when I heard note taking, I just went, oh dear, because I know kids with ADHD, a lot of them do have fine motor struggles. So the handwriting can be difficult. So I know that they use technology. So tell me your insights on how to make it easier if you have ADHD and how we can do note taking in an easier way. I know my kids use apps for
Yep.
their calendar. They use voice to text. What else would make note
Mhm.
taking easier for an ADHD brain?
Yeah. So you're coming up with all sorts of awesome solutions. And I would tell Laura, the question I would ask first is how does this child learn? Because that's
Mhm.
the way my Love to Learn Study Skills program works, is we always start with that learning style. Now, are we visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? And generally, my ADHD kiddos, they are more kinesthetic than anything. Sometimes they're very visual, but we could talk, all about ADHD and auditory processing disorder. And so most of my ADHD kids, they're not auditory learners. So when you're talking like the voice to text, my immediate concern with that for like notes
Mhm.
would be, okay, we heard the information maybe from the teacher, and then we heard it say from the student who's, creating the note. We never wrote it down. So how are we going to refer back to it? And the whole idea here is we want to write it. We don't want to type it because the science says we learn more about handwriting
Mhm.
than typing. Now, if you're talking about fine motor issues, yeah, I've worked with lots of kids that they literally physically can't write or they just don't like to write. That's a whole different issue because with so much tech, our kids are used to typing. They're not used to writing anymore. But that goes back to my 7 note taking rules. And I talk about what do we actually write in our notes? Because the reason the note for like class and like the teacher's teaching, this math formula or this person in history, whatever, it's the same as say writing about our homework on our planner because we go back to those W's, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So like a date is important in a science class, history class, just like it's important to have in our planner. So if we can write what we need to write, but not
Mhm.
all the extra stuff that our teens think are, interesting or I'm supposed to write it, then okay, that helps. We're only writing what we have to, which means we don't write too much because really if we pick and choose, that makes our notes better and it helps us only write so much so we don't ever get tired or physically feel like we can't write.
So that must be something that you teach in your program, how to figure out what is important to write down so that they're
Exactly.
not feeling they have to write down every single word that the teacher says.
Exactly. And then we
Okay.
talk about where the information comes from too, because you've got teachers that talk, you've got teachers that put PowerPoints up, you've got here, read the book, figure it out. I mean, there's lots of group work, like there's all these different ways of teaching. And yet the way the teacher wants the teens to know the information depends on the teacher. And then we got all sorts of different education too, right? At home versus in school. And then each curriculum is designed a certain way. And then in different countries, different level, it's very different. But yet it always comes back to, does this child know how to learn? Have we learned study skills? And so we actually feel like we know what to do in any learning environment.
And this is where communication with parents, teachers, students, collaboratively working together would be really
Yes.
important so that you know what to communicate over to the the tutor who's working with your child on those executive function skills,
Exactly.
on those study skills.
You got
And you talk about the nerdy method. Is this something that you've created?
it is. I was like, "Should I bring it up now or should I wait?" Because I was like, "I know we're going there." And so, literally, the method I use is the NERDY method, and I laugh. Yeah, it is new. So, Laura, you're probably like, what is she talking about?" So, I actually worked with a coach over the summer, and she's like, "You have to have a name for the way you teach these skills." And I'm like, "I teach them in a certain order. I teach them, 2 lessons per skill." And the more I explained it to her, she's like, "That's your method." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh." And so, I mean, it's been something I've used for several years now as a tutor when I've been teaching these skills. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, this is what I did when I was in school because that's what the Love to Learn program is based on is, okay, this is how I learned the skills. This is how I know these are the skills the teens I'm tutoring, like with their math homework or English homework, whatever, don't have. And so, yeah, the nerdy method is all about learning style, all about which study skills, all about how they're learning it. So when parents are like, well, my kid needs help with this study skill, I immediately go, well, that's not the first skill we're going to talk about. And so sometimes there has to be a little convincing of, okay, yeah, your child needs help with this, but until we have these other skills in place, you're not going to see the results you want, and your teen is not going to get the help he needs.
So it's like foundational skills that are building. Okay.
I love that word. I feel like when so many people hear the word tutor,
Mm.
or they feel like, okay, she's going to help with math homework. She's going to help with
Yes.
this paper. And it's like, okay, we have to choose between the study skills and the content. And if I get to choose, the study skills are more important because, okay, we need to learn how to learn versus remembering who that guy was or why that math problem matters. It's like that stuff matters too. But if we don't know how to learn it, that's just gonna be a huge problem in a future class. It's like, okay, your
Yeah.
kid didn't have notes for this class, so he's not gonna have notes for any class in the future, okay? She never remembered to turn the homework in. She's never gonna remember until she learns that skill.
Yeah, so learning how to learn. In Ontario, on our report cards, we have a section called learning skills, and that
Mhm.
actually comes in the elementary report cards before like the academic stuff. It's the learning skills. That's the most important thing. And our children who have deficits in executive functioning really need support with learning how to learn the learning skills. So yeah, your nerdy method sounds awesome. I love the name of it.
I feel like I'm a nerd, and so it was really easy, and then it's like, okay, which skills go under which part? And so it's like, yep, this works very easily. I thought it was gonna be 4 letters, and I was like, "No, it needs 5 because a lot of them pair together really nicely." So,
And you often talk about like learning to love to learn.
yeah.
And our teenagers with ADHD often, maybe lots of teenagers, but especially with ADHD, don't enjoy studying. They may not love going to school. They may not love learning. What's behind that and how can we foster a love of learning?
I feel like our listeners might go, "You've said the same thing 3 times," but, it really comes down to, do those teens, those children, do they know how to learn? Like, that's the simple answer. Because
Mhm.
in a perfect world, I would work with only middle schoolers because
Mhm.
middle school is the perfect time to learn these study skills, because we've gotta get through the point of, okay, we've learned how to read, and then we have that switch from around 4th grade from learning how to read to learning, like, reading to learn,
Mhm.
and so it's like, okay, we need to get that in place for at least a couple, 2, 3 years, and then suddenly it's like, okay, we're changing teachers, we're changing classrooms, all of a sudden there's more homework, all of a sudden everything's faster. And so if we can learn these skills in middle school, when we get to high school, okay, our teens again, probably new building, new teachers, new classmates, everything's new again. But yet, if they've learned what works for me, how I can keep track of all this stuff, how I learn, how I do homework, how I do study, like all that learning stuff, all these study skills, then that's not something they have to try to figure out too, on top of everything else. And so if
Right.
we've got a kid sitting in the classroom or trying to do homework at home and hasn't learned these skills, how can we love to do something we don't know how to do? We're just told, "Here, go do it." We've all done something for the first time that wasn't fun because no one told us what we were doing.
I love that. How can we love to do something that we don't know how to do? Love it.
And that's how it is for any teen without study skills, and like you said, ADHD just complicates that further. Because I mean, yeah, I've learned from you just how far behind their brains really are when development, so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's something to keep in mind. If you have a 15-year-old, their executive functioning may be closer to an 11, 12, 13-year-old. So
Mhm.
we'll often think, well, you're 15, you're 16, you should be able to do this, but let's take into account where they are in terms of their brain development, their unique brain design. And I really like how you talk about like understanding their own learning style. How do they learn best? How do they like what style do they love to learn in? Are they kinesthetic learners? Are they more visual? Do they like to work, independently? Do they like to work in a group? How can they
Mhm.
present their learning? Like maybe the teacher is asking everyone to write an essay, but maybe they could present their learning in a different way that's more aligned with, who they are as a learner. And I think that's something to really collaborate with teachers on so that your child has a chance to shine and their strengths get to come through. But it starts with laying that foundation and supporting the skills that they need.
Yes, yes. And when you talk about an essay, it makes me think about what you asked in the very beginning about kids that have kind of the fine motor issues. One of the things when I'm teaching test taking strategies is it's like if you have to write an essay, but you don't have a lot of time, or maybe you don't feel like you can, it's like you can write out the facts in a bullet format. Will you lose some points for formatting? Yeah, but the teacher cares more about do you know your stuff more so than can you write a pretty sentence. That's
Mhm.
literally what I tell teens. It's like if you have to spend 10 minutes writing a pretty sentence or 10 minutes writing out 10 facts that are in bullet form, you're going to get more points and show your understanding if it's written this way instead of that way, even if it's not right.
I think that's where the voice to text can help because you can open up your Google document and press like there's the read write in there and you can speak your answers in and then it goes into text. So that is
That's
something
a
that can
different
really
thing,
be
yeah, as long
helpful.
as that's not the main resource, yeah. Because my
Mm,
auditory learners, like, I encourage them to talk, like, they need to hear the information as much as possible, but a lot of times auditory and ADHD do not go together. Not
mm,
very often. Dyslexia
mhm.
for sure, but not generally ADHD.
Well, Jesse, thank you so much for being a part of the ADHD Family Summit. I know you have a beautiful gift for everybody in the audience. Can you tell us about it?
Yes. I wanted to give everybody my homework buster because that's my go-to freebie. So that's 5 tips to bust those homework objections. Because we could have had our whole interview just about why is my teen not doing homework, which goes back to study skills, which the homework buster talks more about. And then my newest gift, my newest creation is the study review game template because we
Oh.
talked about, okay, yeah, do teens think learning is fun? Is studying fun? To me, yes, it is. It's like, why wouldn't you want to learn for the sake of learning? But we got to get our teens there. So this helps families and ideally the teens turn any game into a study resource. So that's what my other freebie is. I couldn't just choose one.
I can't wait. Thank you. You're giving us 2 gifts, and I can't wait to
Mhm.
try that. I've got 2 teenagers, so I can't wait to try that out with them. I'll let you know how it goes. I'd like to invite everybody into the ADHD Village Facebook group. Look for Jesse's thread. Tell us what you learned today. If you have any questions for Jessie, you can put them there. She's active in the ADHD Village. And the more that you share, the more questions you ask, the more aha moments that you share, the more we're encouraging other people in our village. They're learning through your comments. We're connecting with each other. You may have the same question that somebody else has, and maybe they were nervous to ask, and you've asked it. Now they're getting the answer. So I really encourage you to participate in our Facebook group. And when you comment under Jesse's thread, you will be entered in a draw to win all sorts of fabulous prizes, including I have my coloring book, Color Your Way to Connection. It has affirmations and mandalas and journal prompts. You'll also be entered in a draw to win a scholarship to the Parenting is Easy program and the Warrior Mama Escape Retreat in Mexico this February. So, hope to see you in the ADHD Village. Also, if you're still wanting to have access to all of these recordings, they are still available. You can upgrade to VIP at any time. Then you have access to the recordings, the beautiful action workbook, and so much more. Thank you again, Jesse. I'm so grateful you're here in the village. We have a saying, find your people and love them hard. And I'm just so grateful that you're a part of the ADHD Village.
You're definitely one of my people, Laura. So thank you.
And thanks everyone for watching. See you in the ADHD Village or maybe in Mexico. Bye.